Good morning, and welcome to the Paul Green Comedy PaulCast. It is March 11th, 2024, episode 103. I am coming to you from Los Angeles, the city of angels, good old Hollywood, La La Land, Tinseltown, and all of the other nicknames. So, I am, let's see, what's going on? So, yesterday, I pretty much just drove from San Diego to Los Angeles, following my gig Saturday night in San Diego, where I got to perform in a martial arts dojo for a support group for people grieving the loss of loved ones. That was my Saturday night. And then today, I was pretty much on the road. And then I had an opportunity to meet up with a good friend of mine from Los Angeles, a very talented comic, and also an incredibly talented social media influencer. He has absolutely gone bonkers on social media the last couple of years and has amassed somewhere around, I think, 9 million followers between all of the different social media channels that he posts content on. His content is incredibly funny, very positive. It really elicits really genuine positive emotions, not only from the people in the videos, but also online, obviously. And he and I have been working together to start trying to convert his online influence into real-life, in-person influence. And so I have been lending him what little technical skills I have in the digital marketing space, websites, CRMs, lead capture, Facebook ads, all of that stuff, as I do have a day job that is tangential to a lot of that. So he and I had a great time catching up and getting some work done. I actually haven't seen him in person in a really, really long time, but he's a good friend of mine. We stay in touch. We'll talk 2 or 3 times a week on the phone, but he lives in Los Angeles, obviously, and I live in Phoenix, so we don't get to see each other in person. He and I are going to be doing a show in Phoenix, Arizona, though, in May, I believe, if I remember the date correctly. And so I am very much looking forward to that show, working with him, helping him achieve his success and his dreams. Our dreams are very similar. He has just gone about it a way that, honestly, I kind of wish I could go as well. I've been trying to figure out the social media thing. He did figure it out. He cracked the code and has been very successful. What's really interesting about this buddy of mine, I'm not saying his name on purpose just because I don't know if he would want me to say his name or not. But I actually met him about 8 years ago. Maybe, oh gosh, it's probably been 10 years now. Jeez, time is flying. So I met him actually in Tempe, Arizona, about 10 years ago when I first started doing stand-up comedy. I was just a few months in. I had been taking stand-up comedy, again, in Tempe, Arizona, from my teacher. And as part of the stand-up comedy class, we would have these student showcase comedy shows. But the teacher would book headliners a lot of times to come out and obviously headline the show, since most of the show was students, and a lot of us weren't that good yet. So it was kind of a way to, like, for the audience that paid, to make sure that at the end of the show, there's actually a very funny, successful comedic headliner to close out the show. So, that the whole show wasn't all student amateurs doing comedy, learning comedy. So anyway, one of those showcases, again, about 10 years ago, he's a friend of mine now. He actually came out from LA then and headlined that comedy show. And, I remember being all starstruck and intimidated and like, oh, this is a Los Angeles stand-up comedian. Oh, he's in LA, he's in Hollywood, and he's the headliner. And so I remember after the show, just outside of the showroom, just going up and just shaking his hand and introducing myself. And he was incredibly gracious, very kind. And I still remember he gave me his phone number and just said, hey, if you ever come out to LA, give me a call, shoot me a text. He's like, I'll be happy to, share any connections I have or, point you in the right direction if you need anything. And at that point in time, I had no intention whatsoever of moving to LA. I hadn't wrapped my head around that possibility yet. But I just remember being so impressed and very grateful that this LA comic was being so gracious and respectful to me, because at that time I didn't really think too highly of myself or, that I was, worth this sort of, just an LA comic just being so open to give his contact information and to be supportive and to share anything that he knew and any way that he could be helpful. So I always remember that. And then, I ended up moving out to LA about a year later, and I didn't even think to contact him. By then it was, it'd been a year, and, I'm sure he didn't remember me either. And so anyway, so I move out to LA, and then maybe about 2 or 3 years later, I remember I was at the Comedy Store for some reason, and this comic was out in the sort of patio area. Those of you familiar with the Comedy Store in Hollywood, there's this sort of outdoor, like, covered patio area in front of the Comedy Store. And I remember seeing him and shaking his hand, and he kind of gave me that, like, hey, have we met, or how do I know you? And I made some sort of snarky comment. It's like, oh, yeah, I'm that comic who does the joke about airport security, or, something sort of snarky. And he kind of laughed or whatever. And then that was about it. But somewhere along the lines, he and I became friends on Facebook. And then in about, it was probably maybe 2019, 2020. I don't remember when this all happened in relationship to the pandemic, but he posted something on Facebook saying that he needed some help with something going on his website. And it was like a very specific sort of website glitchy thing that was happening. And I looked at it and I was kind of like, oh, that's probably something I could figure out what's going on. It has something to do with this call to action button on his website was showing up blank or something. And I looked at that. I was like, oh, there's probably just something going on with the text font or the text colors. I'm like, I could probably log into the back of this guy's website and go in and try to figure out what the heck's going on with his website. So I just reached out to him on Facebook and said, hey, I'd be happy to see if I can help you out with that. And so, yeah, he was really appreciative that I was willing to do that. And I went into his website. I figured out how to fix it. And then I started looking at his website and just thought, I don't think this website looks very good. And so that led to a very interesting business relationship where I actually rebuilt a whole website for him from scratch. And and did that. And then through that, we just realized that, we have a very similar approach, to life. We've had some similar experiences. We're both very much into, mental health and, being open about, depression and being open about what we're going through. And so we developed this very genuine kind of man-to-man friendship to where, it's not uncommon for me or him to call each other up and be like, what's going on? Be like, dude, I'm just feeling really depressed. Just wanted to reach out to somebody. And then it's like, dude, just what's going on? We'll talk through it. And so through that, we've had a very genuine personal friendship. When I was still living in LA, we would hang out a lot. We'd do a lot of things together. Whenever we could. When I moved back to Phoenix, we still stayed in touch, and I'll still help him out from time to time. That's actually what I'm doing now, is whenever he has some sort of technology thing, he'll reach out to me because, he trusts me. And so it's been a very beneficial and positive friendship for me over the years. So very, very grateful to still have a good friend who's a comic in Los Angeles who 10 years ago was gracious enough to extend just a hand of friendship to some stranger stand-up comedian in Tempe, Arizona, who he didn't know from Adam. And that small gesture of kindness ended up years later resurfacing into a friendship that is very meaningful to me. And I'm always happy to help him out however I can and do whatever I can to support him to accomplish his dreams. And we've already talked about, touring and doing shows together. Should we be able to figure out how to convert his online, those 9 million followers into people who actually pay tickets and come out to see a comedy show. So that's what I spent my evening doing, is reconnecting with him. And I am, I'm just so fortunate for the friendships that I have in my life. After I hung out with him, I had missed a call from another good friend of mine, Elizabeth Pitt, which if you go back about 2 weeks ago, she was actually on the podcast. And every time I talk to her, we just have the most empowering, genuine, authentic conversations. She's so encouraging. It's like I almost get emotional talking to her because of how encouraging and complimentary she is. Complimentative, I think, is actually the word. She is of me, and she just says, Paul, I know how great you are, and I know that you're going to just be a big star, and I cannot wait until you call me up when you're getting the big award, and then, we get to go have dinner, and she says it with such conviction and such authenticity. And man, I'll tell you, when she says it, it's like I believe her. And it's like I almost believe her more than I believe in myself sometimes. Yeah, I'm, just being very transparent. I'm not always, I have plenty of self-doubts that this big dream of mine is going to come to fruition. And, when I have these doubts, I'll end up on a conversation with her, and she's just 100% certain. She just has no doubts. And the way that she speaks to me, and she's a remarkable human being. I mean, she has accomplished some incredible things in her life by her education, her career pursuits, her relationship pursuits. I mean, she is just a powerhouse, go-getter, genuine, beautiful, expansive, soulful, compassionate human being, and has been such a tremendous blessing in my life. And, we talked for about an hour, and she ended that conversation just absolutely flooding me with compliment and compliments can sound almost superficial. It's like there's nothing superficial about it. She's so deep and soulful in her belief in me, and her belief in who I am, and this journey that I'm on, and what I'm seeking and what I'm going for. And she just has no doubt that it's all leading to me realizing these crazy, audacious, impossible dreams that I have been pursuing consciously for about 10 years and subconsciously really my entire life. And so to go from hanging out with, my buddy who I met 10 years ago by happenstance and didn't even, stay in touch with him until we happened to meet up years later, 3, 4, 5 years later. And now we get to collaborate on how to help him with his dreams, and then to go to that from having a conversation with my good friend back in Phoenix, who is so authentic and genuine in her praise and belief in me, which is just so meaningful. While last night or 2 nights ago, I'm doing a comedy show in San Diego because another friend of mine, believes in me enough to book me to come headline this show, which is a very unique circumstance. And tonight I'm staying at a buddy's house who is an incredible actor and performer and improviser and magician. And he and I have been friends for about, actually, when I first moved out to Hollywood, when I first moved out to LA in 2015, I was introduced to him by a mutual connection, and he reached out and said, "Hey, let's go get some coffee, and I'll show you the ropes," because he has been living the actor's dream and the actor's journey pretty much his entire life. And he and I still get to connect, and he lets me stay at his place, no questions asked. And, I'm just so fortunate that I have these beautiful human beings who are, part of this journey of mine and who support me in whatever way that they can, whether that just be encouragement or whether that is giving me a place to stay or whether that's booking me on a show. And, that is just so meaningful and so significant and so important to have that tribe of people and to really safeguard that tribe of people. And one of the things that Elizabeth and I talked about, she's the really good friend who has been given me so much genuine praise, but we also talked about the other side of that, which is sometimes you have to cut other people out of your life, or other relationships need to be diminished, or you got to set very strong boundaries with individuals who begin to prove themselves as maybe not on your team, who you find are maybe not as genuine or maybe not as altruistic in your friendship, and maybe aren't actually on your team. They say they're on your team, but they actually are privately rooting for you to fail, or they're there for you when things are going crappy, but they aren't there to support you when things are going well, or vice versa. When things are going well, they're your best friend, but when you've been kicked and you're down, all of a sudden they aren't there for you. And really learning to navigate the complexity of human relationships, and when to be vulnerable, and when to set boundaries, and when to reach out, and when you have to maybe move on from a relationship, or when you have to set a more clear boundary, or you have to be a little more cautious in terms of who you can really be yourself around. And I was thinking about Jordan Peterson, and he said, he probably said it a handful of times, but he said something along the lines of, it's really important to find out who you can share good news with. And that was really interesting, because that's when you find out who your friends are. It's like, I think for me, I've known in the past, there are friends who love to commiserate. They love it when things are going bad and when you can, talk shit and talk about, how bad everything is and talk about, how bitter and upset and blah, 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 blah. But what about when things are going well? Who can you share good news with? And, will you find that sometimes when you share good news with people who you thought were your close friends, they aren't actually excited for you. They aren't actually able to embrace you when you're being successful. It's kind of like they almost need you to be a failure for the relationship to work. And, it's a very interesting dynamic to pick and choose the individuals who you bring into your inner circle and who your tribe is, who your team is. And maybe when you start to realize that people who you thought were in your tribe maybe aren't, and trying to understand and know when it's time to maybe let some relationships go, or maybe, you have to realign some boundaries. And not like those always need to be expressed. It's not like you need to tell everybody, I am now setting a boundary where I will no longer talk to you about my relationships, because every time I talk to you about my relationships, you are cynical, or, whatever it is. But sometimes it's just, a mental note of just going, I don't think I can discuss those types of issues or types of topics with this person, or, this person, I'm not really going to let them know. They're not going to be my first call when I have really, really good news. When something really awesome happens. I'm going to call this other person who, when I have a big win, is excited for me and can celebrate that win with me. So anyway, I am just so grateful for, the individuals who are on my team and so supportive and so loving and give me so much encouragement and so much help and resource, because nobody accomplishes a dream on their own. Nobody does it in a silo. And I am so grateful to have such incredible, loving, expansive, supportive, ride or die friends in my corner. And I hope that I am that same ride or die friend in return for other individuals. I sure try to be, and I sure hope I am. So to all of you out there pursuing your dreams, I hope that you consider me in your tribe as well. So as much as I can be as a random voice shouting into the internet, I am on your team. And if you're out there pursuing a dream and you're giving it your all and your intentions are pure and you're not, if your dream is to start the next drug cartel, I'm probably not on that team. But if you have any noble pursuit, any noble dream, any creative dream, any entrepreneurial dream, any, relationship or career goal or path or dream or hobby or whatever it is, anything that's positive influence in your life, a positive influence in the world, I am on your team as much as I can be. I believe in you. I believe in going for dreams, and may you find success. So, I love you all so much. I hope you're doing well. This is episode 103, March 11th, 2024, the Paul Green Comedy PaulCast, a podcast by a dreamer for dreamers. I hope you're all doing well. I love you all so much, and I will talk to you tomorrow.